What's going on, everybody? It's your boys over here at Three Man Weave. I'm your lovely co-host ZD in the building with CJ. We coming at you guys live, man, on some Monday. It's September 29th. And CJ, we got a pretty good docket to talk about today, my man. Today I was just going through the motions a little bit. I have a schedule that I follow pretty rigidly. I was able to create some content, went outside a little bit. Starting to look pretty rainy out, overcast outside right now. Got in the gym though, so I'm feeling pretty good. We had media day today for the other 25 teams that didn't happen last week on Friday. So we got a couple things to talk about, bro. We obviously had the Toronto Raptors offseason file as well, bro. But how you doing, man? How are you feeling today? And how's the lovely co-host doing, man? CJ in the building.
Yes, sir, man. I'm doing great, bro. Having to deal with a couple things, but besides that, bro, it's life, and I think we were chopping it up a little before we started recording, just ready for the basketball season, bro. Just seeing all the everything that's been going on with NFL. Our fantasy teams aren't looking too hot
Oh, I
right now. We
know,
just
bro.
just lost Malik Neighbors for the
Neighbors.
season, and I lost James Conner as well. So trying to
uh,
push through it, but just kind of getting
me
ready for
too.
the NBA season, man. I think, being so locked in with it, been doing like that recap for our fantasy league
Yeah,
and
of course.
helping out Opinionated with the Ballers of the Week, been tapped in with football. So it's just getting me ready for, what I really enjoy and what I really love, and that's basketball, man. So doing great, man. Can't complain. It's Monday, starting the week off right, and I'm ready to chop it up to you about some of these media day pressers and obviously the Toronto Raptors. So doing good, bro. Doing great. You're doing
Yeah,
great.
nah, for sure, man. It's good to hear. We got some preseason games coming up, man. I think they're happening in Abu Dhabi. We know media day is something the NBA does every single season. It just gives the opportunity for all the reporters, news guys like ourselves, obviously, and then of course ESPN, the leader in worldwide sports, and everybody else, just an opportunity to speak to the players. I think it's dope. I haven't ever really been super invested. I wouldn't even say I'm like invested, but I've been looking more into the clips and just seeing the schedule and stuff like that. And it's pretty cool how they do it, honestly. They run a tight ship. I mean, it's a multi-billion-dollar business. They get in and out. They're having 25 teams go today. I think they started at 8 a.m. all the way until right now.
Mm-hmm.
So we have some teams that are actually in their media day currently. We're going to be speaking about the ones that happened last Friday. So, like I just said, I kind of gave you guys an overview of media day and the purpose of it. But yeah, just diving right in, man. Like I mentioned earlier, too, these Abu Dhabi preseason games. I think we're going to have, Knicks and the Sixers. I wanted to talk about them for a second. We saw Cat's interview. I know you had seen that clip that was probably going around about the injury that he, supposedly had over this offseason. What I got from his media day interview was the fact that he just seems a lot more ready to go. Like I haven't ever heard him speak very highly of the team that he never really walked in. I couldn't find a clip of, when he was on the Timberwolves when he said that they were going to win a championship, but I think he feels really confident about where the Knicks are. And Josh Hart was saying similar things. And so I've read into the Knicks. I think we've spoken about them on this show pretty heavily. We think the Cavs and the Knicks will most likely end up being that one seed, but just to see him smile, man, and be so happy coming off a pretty solid year. I would argue he probably had the best year of his career just in terms of impact. Maybe not counting stats, but the playoff performance that we got from Cat was just awesome, bro.
Mm-hmm.
So I was going through a little bit of the clips of that, watching the Knicks. I saw the Sixers as well. We've seen Tyrese Maxey speak a little bit more about his new look. He's rocking the braids now, kind of AI a little. Have you seen his new look, bro?
No,
Did you
I
get a
have.
chance to
I'm
see
gonna
it,
look
bro?
it
He
up.
got the tight corn.
I,
Yeah, look it up
I'm gonna
real
look it
quick,
up.
bro.
I
He's got
haven't seen it. No.
yeah, for sure. But he got tight cornrows. They called him a veteran. When I was listening to it was crazy.
That's
That's what I was
crazy.
gonna say,
He
man. A
he is though.
reporter, yeah, they was like, "Hey, man, how do you feel?" Because they asked him about VJ, and this is the Tyrese, but they were just like, "Yeah, you being his vet," and I was like, "Vet."
Right.
I was like,
Yeah.
Tyrese Maxey's a vet.
Bet. Yeah.
But he answered with grace, bro. I think him and VJ Edgecombe are, I would argue, they are going to be, my hot take is they'll be like a little top five guard duo either this year or next year. I'm pretty sure, man. That duo is going to get it going. It seemed like Maxey had a lot of confidence in VJ. Same with Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid, I saw his media day interview. His was a lot shorter than Maxi's. He didn't seem like he wanted to talk a ton, but a couple key questions about the injury. He said he was ready to go. He's been having some swelling in the knee, but at this point, if Joel Embiid tells you he's ready to go, I could care less. We know the bumps and bruises that dude has been through. He's played through a ton of injuries the last few seasons, so the fact that I think it was one of the first questions they just asked, which, again, I kind of rock with it. They have like 10, 15-minute slots, so there's really no time to BS. They kind of just
Get straight
ask the
to.
questions, get right into it. And I think Embiid gave a really good answer. He said, he felt really confident about this year. He's felt pretty healthy, and he feels like he can compete. I don't know if you saw the top 100 list yet.
I did.
We won't go through all 100 players, but Embiid was not in the top 10, which was really interesting. Obviously, the NBA landscape has changed, but I would argue when healthy, Joel Embiid's still a top 10 player in the NBA. So I thought that was really interesting to see, too. He spoke about VJ Edgecombe as well. VJ was sort of the talk of the town here. In his rookie media day, he wasn't asked a ton of questions about the team. They asked a lot about himself, his heritage, the draft, the offseason, how the summer went. But I think the peripheral, all of these other players answering so highly of VJ, I just think it goes to show you, he's going to be right up there with Cooper Flagg in the Rookie of the Year race. I wouldn't be surprised if you see Edgecombe immediately play 30 minutes from day one.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really cool to see. Knicks and Sixers got that little rivalry, so there might be a little bad blood in the preseason. You never know. But I also saw the Nets, man. The Nets, Michael Porter Jr. showing his new threads. We seen MPJ this summer, bro. I think you spoke. I mean, I don't know if you broke it. It might have happened while we were doing 3-man. It was right before, I think.
I think it
They
was.
ended up having that swap with Cam Johnson and similar style player, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the defense for Cam Johnson is really where I give him the plus. But you said it, bro. Seeing MPJ in the new threads, I think he was really excited. They asked him, like, what do you expect from this season? He said, I'm going to be a better scorer, better leader. Bro, I had it in my notes. Like, I don't think I've heard MPJ say that. And it's not because, he's a bad player or anything. He was just on the Nuggets,
Right.
where Nikola Jokic is going to be the guy. He was never looked at as a potential leader or anything. He didn't have to do that in that locker room.
Mm-hmm.
But for the Nets and their 5 first-round picks and, Cam Thomas being there, like, he's got to be a leader, bro. He's a veteran there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was really dope
Champion.
to see his outlook on like his preview and little outlook on the year. And he said he wants to try to get to 20, 25 points a game, be a really good vocal leader, and continue to show, why that trade happened. Because let's not overlook that the Nuggets thought, and so did the Nets, that those players were of similar value.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, or else they wouldn't have traded them, right? The money, the contract, the value, the way that they play. So that was really interesting to see. We saw Cam Thomas's short interview as well. Super interesting. One reporter dove straight in. He was just like, "How do you feel about signing your qualifying offer?" And Cam Thomas was like, "I'm just glad to play basketball." For people who don't know, Cam Thomas is like a Kevin Durant-esque type of player. He's just a hooper. He's not really about any of the other BS that comes with basketball. But I think it was interesting to see his outlook as well, because I would argue, I said this on the pod, but he's one of the better one-on-one players we have in the league, and his value is such a roller coaster. Mm-hmm. So I think he's going to have a really good contract here. We'll probably see him get 20, 21 points a game just on decent efficiency, but he seemed really excited. I think he was excited to get the qualifying offer out of the way, kind of prove that he's worth being on an NBA roster and potentially on a contender. Mm-hmm. I think that's Cam Thomas ultimately wants to win championships. There wasn't any championship talk in the Nets media day, and for good reason.
Right.
They're not going to set those guys up to fail, but it was interesting to hear a couple of their, we saw Danny Wolf speak to all their rookies, Igor speak, but Cam Thomas, MPJ really stuck out to me. So, the Friday media day was interesting. Those first couple teams that were going, the Nets, the Sixers, the Knicks, like, I think all 3 of those teams have an interesting season coming up, and the Nets for different purposes, but Sixers to see if they can stay healthy. The Knicks, man, they're a contender, and their time is now. I would argue that out of all three of those teams, they probably have the best chance to win an NBA championship. But those are kind of my first thoughts, brother. If you want to add anything before I dive into the Pelicans and the Suns
Yeah.
media day.
Yeah, no, we kind of talked about it a little bit earlier before we started recording. I haven't been as tapped in, haven't been watching them. I will for these upcoming ones, after the pod and
You'll
whatnot. But
see them. Yeah,
yeah,
you'll
yeah,
see them.
definitely. But it's just interesting seeing like how you brought it up. Like there's certain players like the Cam Thomases of the world that, they don't really like the whole media, right? Not saying they
Right.
don't
Yeah.
like the media itself. It's just more so like they just go there to hoop. They do what they want to play basketball. So it's interesting to see, like how you said his was a little shorter. There's other people's that were a little bit longer. Just kind of, it's interesting how it's a part of the game, right? Everyone kind of wants to see kind of your expectations, how you feel about this offseason coming into the year. What do you think of the team and the roster? And it's very interesting, like you brought it up earlier. You never really been tapped into the media day, and I'm the same way as well. But I feel like since we do a podcast, it's kind of a cool perspective that we get to
Yeah.
see
Right.
before the season starts and before you're dropping 30 points or you're on a 5-game losing streak, whatever. You kind of see how it is, expectations coming into the year. So it's very interesting seeing everyone's perspective of how their year is going to
Right.
go and kind of their expectations for this upcoming season. So yeah, not really much to say, man. Just like you said, I have we brought it up whenever we did our rookie of the year predictions. Think VJ is going to be in the running for that, and it's incredible that a lot of the players on that roster as well are kind of thinking the same thing, buying into their young guy, and obviously he's a high draft pick, so it's kind of not expected, but you're investing into a guy with such a high pick. You kind of
Yeah.
hoping for him to do great things in the league, and I think it's just like you said, kind of goes to show that the type of team that they have, and if they can stay healthy with VJ on the come up, it's going to be a very intriguing year for them. So yeah, not much to say. Like you said, Knicks, of course, contenders,
Yeah. Of course.
probably the most
Brunson,
interesting to see the,
Hart.
like you said, Cats kind of like championship aspirations. Feel like that wasn't something that you were really hearing
Yeah. Yeah.
hear, hearing from him when he was
Like,
in Minnesota, but
not at all.
excited, bro. Just like seeing this stuff, it just gets me ready, man. It gets me fired up
Yeah.
because just ready to see it on the court. Leading up to the year, obviously preseason coming up and seeing how everyone's looking, but
Yeah,
it's
bro.
just get me excited, bro. That's all I gotta say.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think Paul George was asked a question too. Just could it get worse for the Sixers? He answered no. He thought it was already they kind of already passed looking over the hill. And you brought up a really good point with VJ. I think just getting the perspective from all of these players has been what's most valuable to me. Rolling along the Pelicans, man. I know you saw Zion.
Hmm.
How does Zion look?
Man, Zion's looking good, bro. If he could,
What?
he's
Yeah.
he's saying he's the best shape he's ever been since he was at
I'm about to say you
Duke,
could
and
probably speak about the Pelicans one because I know that was posted everywhere, man.
yeah,
Zion Williams coming out saying this is the best he's felt since high school or Duke
yeah,
days or
yeah, yeah,
something.
yeah.
We have not heard him say that in years. To be honest with you guys, we see Zion looks different every media day. They I saw a meme and they like clipped it
Mm-hmm.
where like each picture just looks different. And I honestly don't like that about the internet. I think they kind of make fun of people's body
They do.
change, and I'm not rocking with that, to be honest with you. I think this is just purely Zion. Like, dude, he looks awesome. He looks like he's trying to kill.
Mm-hmm.
He does every year though.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm
That's
hoping
true.
I'm hoping, he spoke about Jeremiah Fears. He spoke about Derek Queen. He said those dudes are, better than he was as a rookie.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime they're going out and practicing, like they're just getting to it. He said the development of the younger players has been something that obviously he hasn't been able to stay close to outside of the team that he plays on. But he says like there's new guys coming into the league that were much better than where I was. So that's a testament to the developmental coaches. But yeah, Zion Williamson with the new transformation, brother. We saw some of the Pelicans rookies speak as well. Jeremiah Fears is just uber confident. He was asked about his jersey, and he said, "Man, I got to do it for the kids, bro. I'm not somebody who's afraid of the moment. I came here to win games, and putting the zero fears on my back is something that I'm confident in. And if people can get behind that, cool. But it's because I really have no fear. So I love that answer. I think he's not doing it for the camera or whatever. That cat's really serious about hoops. Saw Derek Queen speak too for a second. Um, the question, you spoke about it last time. We spoke about it on the Pelicans offseason file. He won't play for a little while, but his mentality as well, is just win, win, win all the time. There's a reason they traded up for him, that unprotected pick to Atlanta. But just seeing the winning mentality, they asked him like, whenever you're back on the court, how do you? He said, "Man, I'm gonna hold down the paint. Like I'm not worried about this. I think we're gonna be a good team." The Pelicans' outlook is looking more positive than originally expected. I think I just have bias because I was just looking at their media day.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say, like when we went through the offseason files, be on the lookout for them as a sleeper team.
Yeah.
I didn't get a chance to see Herb Jones's right and Trey Murphy's media day. I did see a clip of Trey Murphy doing an interview with Yoke, and Jokic was like, "Oh, you put up 40 on us,
Mm.
bro." And I'm pretty
I
sure you
saw
might have
that.
seen that,
Yeah.
but yeah, Trey Murphy's somebody who can go as well. So if
Mm-hmm.
he's healthy, if when Murray comes back, Queen comes back, like that team's going to be a team to deal with if guys are on the court. So I don't want to speak too early, but the Pelicans looking kind of dangerous, bro.
Yeah.
Like the injuries is something they've always had to deal with, but just seeing Zion's energy, especially Jeremiah Fear's energy, that was honestly my favorite interview. But just seeing the guys that are ready to hoop, and hopefully I get an opportunity to break down Trey Murphy. Seeing Herb Jones, we know he's on that new extension.
Mm-hmm.
He said he wasn't changing his fit, right? Like he's a winning guy as well, and so yeah, the Pels look good.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to Zion and those boys over in New Orleans. But did you have anything else you wanted to add to that?
Nah. Yeah. You got it. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, brother. And then we head out to the Valley. This was last Friday. This was the last team that we had for media day, but the Phoenix Suns. Phoenix Suns have had a tumultuous offseason. We've seen Kevin Durant get traded away. I think that signaled to us over at Three Man Weave and pretty much everybody around the NBA that the Suns were going in a different direction. CJ and I spoke about this pretty heavily in the offseason files, so go check that out. But
Mm-hmm.
we did bring it up that it is good that Ishbia is moving away from the second apron, the repeater tax for a roster that's not a championship caliber roster. He was asked some interesting questions as well. Ishbia, that was. A reporter asked him, like, where do you stand right now with the team? What's the outlook? He said, we're still trying to win a championship. Like, I think Matt Ishbia is just all in 24/7. Like I've said before on the podcast, I have respect for that, but at times it's just sort of ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
We saw Devin Booker answer as well. He was speaking that he was ready to build towards a championship in year 11. We saw the new threads, Dylan Brooks, Jalen Green. Those two players I feel like are going to be really good for the Suns. A lot. I'm not saying Kevin Durant wasn't, right? But I think just Jalen Green is now in a better spot. He seemed a lot more comfortable. Just no expectation on him now.
Mm-hmm.
He can just go out and hoop. And then Dylan Brooks is a winner, bro. I think I would love for D Brooks to be on the Lakers. That's a guy that the Lakers could use. But his energy, the way that he talks on defense, his ability to really change the game on the defensive side of the ball, and also be able to hit a couple threes. I think the Suns, come on, Malawak. I saw his interview as well. He's 10 pounds heavier.
Mm.
He's no longer a stick. He came in with a little oomph to him. So, I like that, man. I will say, the Suns, because of Ishbia's guidance, have been put in a fire pit at times. And we know how Beal and the Kevin Durant exits kind of darken their future. But I will say, 4 or 5 years out, Ryan Dunn, Booker will probably still be on the roster. They have, Malawak, hopefully. They have some young pieces that are interesting that are going to contribute to winning. I think I will say this. The Suns had the most unified answers out of any group. It just seemed like they were, I don't know if they had media training something, but guys were giving really similar answers. So I was like, interesting. They must have had some sort of thing there. Because
Right.
when I was watching, I was like, this is like the same answer. Malawak gave the same answer as Dylan Brooks.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But outside of that, I think that speaks to just how close they've gotten though. I think the Suns do have a better team than they do last year in terms of the chemistry,
Mm-hmm.
who's going to be scoring, roles, and that's important when you want to be a good team. I don't know if the record will say so, but I do believe what I've gotten from their media day, and this was 30 minutes of doing some research, but I could get that from their answers and just their togetherness as a team. So yeah, all five of those squads, bro. Knicks, obviously the Sixers, Suns, Nets, Pels, like they're all in different spots. It was super interesting to hear different perspectives from all the players, and I'm really just excited, bro. I think we have day today. 25 teams is a lot, so we'll go through it as fast. I mean, I'll try to get through it as fast as I can. We'll probably won't go through all 25, but we'll talk about some of the ones that are important. But yeah, these five teams that spoke Friday, I mean, I got a lot of good stuff. Everybody seems really excited. We know the Nets are kind of in the worst situation out of the entire bunch, but they too even seem excited. They had a couple players that were on their high horse. So shout out to everybody that did media day. You know, that's a wrap for the first week. They have the 25 other teams going on right now as we speak. So we'll wrap that up for you guys and make sure we report on it as it comes out.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's just kind of piggybacking off of that. The fact that, like you said, with the Suns, they're giving the same answer. I feel like that it's a little interesting, but I think it kind of also just says, like you said, the chemistry that they built in this short time that they've been practicing or whatever with each other as a team. I think that goes a long way. I think that's kind of where it starts. Seeing that happen so early on is good signs. Obviously you haven't really seen
Right.
anything on the court. Nothing's happened, but it's a good start to, what y'all are building, especially everything that they've been through these past couple of seasons with the
That's what it
KD and
is.
Bill, so it's cool. It's dope to see that. And I think like you said, with Jalen Green and, Dylan Brooks, like they are coming in a situation where they know their roles. I feel like that was kind of
Exactly.
where the Suns were at these past couple of seasons, not really knowing who's going to be the
Who's who?
guy, who's going to be
Yeah.
doing what. I feel like everyone knows what they should be doing coming into this year, and it's good
Yeah,
signs. Like you
dude.
said, it's interesting to see that they were, having the same
Yeah.
answers and all on the same page. It's looking bright for them so far at the beginning
Exactly.
of the season. So interesting
Yeah,
to see.
bro. Yeah, and like my goal with the points was just try to break it down for you guys so you maybe don't have to go through it. I think 30 teams is a lot. I know you haven't been super locked in, but it's like that's what I could grab from all those teams. And I think that's exactly that's what happened. I think we have to look at each team on an individual basis. We're speaking about the Raptors here in a second, but they're in an interesting spot as well. I'm excited to see their media day.
Mm-hmm.
I'll probably look at it after this actually, because I know it happened earlier in the day.
Mm-hmm.
I was looking at the schedule. I think they had Eastern to Western.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm not mistaken, the Thunder were going a couple hours ago, and like the
Yes.
Lakers will go. But the reason they do that is because the West Coast is before us, right? So it's 2 hours. They have more time in the day, whatever. But the NBA is smart with that. But I'm excited to see what Toronto's media day looks like. Wonder how Brandon Ingram will talk about where his team's at. Wonder how Scottie Barnes is going to respond. Oh, you, the franchise guy, you're going to be hurt.
Mm-hmm.
You brought it up, IQ. On $32.5 million deal, they're going to expect him to be the main engine to that offense. We're going to have to see answers he gives. So I'm excited, bro. I think kind of gives us a good little preview for this upcoming season. And, what better way to do that than with NBA Media Day?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. You ready to go into this offseason file, though?
Yeah, bro. Yeah, let's get into
All
it,
right,
bro.
take it away, my man.
So, for everyone that doesn't know, we've been going through all the teams throughout the NBA, doing the offseason files where we talk about who they're building around. You go dive deep into, their roster construction and their cap space. And then we also talk about some of their on the court and off the court priorities that they have for this upcoming season. And starting it off, the three players that they're building around. Number one player, Scottie Barnes. Feel like
No
everyone
doubt.
everyone knows who he is. He just signed a 5-year extension to 224 million that begins this year, 2025, 2026 season. He's he is one of those players. He's a point forward, kind of like where the league is going to. A six
Yep.
ten,
Yeah.
6'9"
Exactly.
forward that can initiate the offense. And I feel like he's done he was able to win Rookie of the Year his rookie year, and kind of just building off of that. He's one of those players where I feel like we haven't really been able to see what he can be because he hasn't really had a full healthy season
Full
since then.
year. Yeah.
But his flashes, his sparks of that he's shown us, it's great. He's able to really be like a do it all forward, and if he can get better on his jump shot, his jump shooting ability, that will take his game to a whole nother level. But kind of going off of that, it's just really what he can do like all around the court. Kind of, I wouldn't say like a Paolo, but very similar. How they're kind of
Yeah.
initiating the offense, a big forward that can do it all a little bit. I would say he's a better defender than he is, but I think with him, it's just kind of seeing how he's going to build off of this past season and if he could stay healthy. But when he is, he's clearly the number one player that the Toronto Raptors are building around.
Oh,
Obviously, after
100%.
that this extension that's going to start this upcoming season, it's it's interesting. I feel like that's kind of been, he's been their guy, but he hasn't been the healthiest, so it's kind of hard to really see what that team can be when they're full at their full capability when your best guy isn't healthy. But besides that, man, like, think he averaged 17, 5, and 8 for his career. Incredible numbers for a young rising player in this league, and kind of like saying the fact that he doesn't have a jump shot and he's able to almost be averaging 20 points per game kind of just shows his ability getting to the rim and being able to draw fouls. And think he's definitely one of those players where it's hopefully not, but if these past couple of seasons, it's his health has been the issue. Hopefully that isn't always going to be the question for him, but when he
Yep.
is, I mean, I think he's clearly proven that he's an all-star worthy player, maybe even potential all NBA if he could have a full healthy season, depending on how well the Toronto Raptors are. But yeah, number one player, Scottie Barnes, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, they got to nurture that pick. I think one of the better picks that the Raptors have ever had in their history.
Hmm.
At this moment in time, it's difficult to get a read on Scottie Barnes. You did a good job of explaining that, but he's not in the position to as a two-way player, he can guard a little bit. He definitely know he can score. I think the offensive creation that I brought up was the assist numbers.
Hmm.
The reason that they brought quickly to Toronto was to help Scottie Barnes, initiate the offense. We've seen his ability over time kind of slowly grow and mold into a creator, somebody who's a slasher more so. You did a good job of touching on his issues with the jump shot. I think Toronto, we'll talk about some of their issues later with their balance sheet, but yeah, it's you got to pay a player like this. My
Hmm.
question is like, can he be the number one guy on your team if he's not healthy? I mean, that's the only thing that's the issue here. It just, outside of Scotty, I have no issues with his game. He just doesn't play a ton. And I think that hurts Toronto a lot. We saw that last year with the guys just coming in and out of the lineup. They didn't even have a consistent starting five. But
Hmm.
really, since he's been an all-star, he hasn't had a consistent season to even meet the games requirement. I think it's 65 now. So we'll have to see how that turns out. I think he is the spearhead to the Toronto Raptors franchise. I don't see them switching off of this. And if they ever did make a big trade for him, they're going to get a ton of assets back because he's one of those players in the NBA that a lot of GMs would love to have on their team to build around. And he's young. He's on that $225 million contract extension. I think he's going to be ready to go for this year. I'm excited to see some of his answers, bro. Like whenever we, go back and check out media day, I think Scottie Barnes is going to have some interesting takes because he hasn't played a ton of hoops over the last 2 years. So
Hmm.
I know he's excited to get back out on the court. I know the Raptors are for sure building around him, and they've made that clear over the last few years. And I think that's one of the reasons why they got IQ is just to help him out. We know what he can do on the defensive side of the ball and being that slasher, but his assist numbers is tough to ask, him to also get 8, 9 assists like the Luka Doncic and the Nikola Jokic's of the world. So I think Scottie Barnes is what he is, man. And if he can add a jumper, he'll become an All NBA player consistently. But until he gets that, I think he'll be easily top 50, top 75 player on any given season. But you just got to pencil it in. So
Hmm.
Scottie Barnes, the number one player that the Raptors are building around. Going into the second guy, though, this dude was recently acquired from the Pelicans, but it's none other than Brandon Ingram. Ingram, the Dookie. I mean, we've seen his career unfold past Lakers, so I always have love for BI. I think the Kevin Durant comparisons hurt him earlier in his career. He's also had some health issues as well, but I will say, Brandon Ingram's a 19, 20 point per game scorer for his career. Another consistent mid-range maestro who actually can shoot a little bit more than Scottie Barnes. I think that's the trade-off there is the defense, right? Scottie Barnes can guard. Ingram can guard when he wants to, but not always. I think having Bi in the building gives them another offensive punch outside of RJ Barrett and Emmanuel quickly. And on the $38 million contract, I mean, when BI is in lineups, we've seen the Pelicans do well in the playoffs. We've seen them go to the NBA Cup championship. Like
Mm-hmm.
Brandon Ingram has played in some pretty big games. It's just for him to get to that next level, he has to be on a competing roster and he has to be one of the main dudes.
Mm-hmm.
We know Scottie Barnes is going. I honestly, I was going to say this. I think Bi is going to average the most points on that team.
Yeah.
I just think he's going to be getting the biggest piece of the pie. If you have a fantasy team, you're probably going to want to take Bi. I think Scottie Barnes will give you all the peripherals, the rebounding, the blocks, the assists, plus, 16, 17, 20 points. But Bi can get you 22, 23 a night when he's healthy. And I think he's going to be a really good offensive engine for this team. And just speaking on what he's done for the Pelicans, we've seen him be the skinny guy on the Lakers, not really the Kevin Durant person that guys were hoping that he would turn into. You've seen him go to the Pelicans and prove, hey, man, this dude's one of the best scorers we have in the league, top 100 player, another top 100 player. And just his consistency, I think his mid-range game is the most polished part of his NBA game. I think he shoots free throws very well as well. I think at an 86% clip or something like that. So he has the ability to score at all three levels. And there's, again, the Raptors needed a player like this. They went out, they got Emmanuel quickly to help them with the initiation. I think Brandon Ingram is there for the offensive creation. They need somebody else who can get up to a bucket in a one-on-one scenario,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and who's very comfortable in doing that. I think Bi is looking to play on a competitive roster too. The Pelicans just weren't able to, build around Zion and Brandon Ingram to suffice what they were, to suffice their hunger to win. And I think that's one of the reasons why I went to Toronto is they have won a championship in the last decade. They have an interesting, really young roster. And yeah, I just think having Brandon Ingram in the building just gives the Raptors another offensive firepower piece that they can utilize whenever they feel it's necessary. And Bi is like a vet, bro. Like he's gonna be able to help teach these dudes the ropes. Grady Dick, all these younger guys, Ochi Abaji. Like there's a lot of forwards on this team that need some guidance on what to do and how to get to a bucket one-on-one or how to play off of five out, come off down screens, come off nails and screens and things like that. So I think Brandon Ingram's going to be one of those players that is kind of flies under the radar, but is underrated and definitely helping his team win. So shout
Mm-hmm.
out Bi, man, past Laker, can't overlook that.
Yeah. No, yeah, you said it perfectly, bro. I feel like, with the acquisition of him this past season, obviously we didn't see the full season cuz he got injured, but what he's able to do is exactly what they were missing, and that's, being able to create his own shot and score without having any, Scotty having to create for him or IQ. It's
Do
like
everything, yeah,
you could just give it to Bi and he's gonna get a bucket, like you said, being a 20 point per game, 19, whatever it is for his career. I think it kind of shows what he's able to do, and I think that's what the Raptors have been missing this whole time. With the player of Scotty's caliber, he's able to, like you said, be that slasher and can create for people, just not at an elite level. I feel like that's when you have someone of Bi's caliber where he doesn't need anyone to get him going. He could just do it himself, and
exactly.
being mid range maestro that he is, I think it's kind of like you said what he was able to do for New Orleans these past couple seasons, getting to the NBA Cup and kind of being there whenever Zion hasn't. He obviously, I think I don't think he could be the best player on a championship winning team, but he's one of those players that you have that you do need to get to that point. And I think that is what the Raptors are trying to build. And Bi, like you said, bro, easily one of the best scorers in this league. Very underrated. I feel like he doesn't get the love that he deserves, but think he has an opportunity to show a lot of people what he can be, because he is, arguably, I think, like you said, he's probably going to be the leading scorer for this team, and he's going to be a huge part of their success. If he can do what he's been doing these past couple of seasons in New Orleans, and kind of haven't really been able to see him
In a competitive
in
environment,
a
yeah,
competitive environment. Yeah, so hopefully building
yeah,
around him and kind of building off of Scotty and what he's going to develop into. I think it's a
yep.
perfect pairing. They're not going to be you know,
Clashing, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
they're both forwards, but they play different. So
Different,
one's
yeah.
gonna get a bucket, the other one's kind of like a do it all forward where he's just gonna do what he needs to win.
Retardy yep.
You know you're gonna get some points and get that
Points, yeah.
offensive capability for him. So yeah, no, Bi definitely second player that the Toronto Raptors are building around. Uh,
Yeah, they had to make that move, bro. I think the Raptors were like itching to get somebody like Ingram. So yeah, him being in Toronto is going to be really useful for Scottie Barnes. I think that's the player who's going to benefit the most. It just gives the defense another person to worry about.
yes, sir. Going into the third player, the one and only RJ Barrett, another Dookie. I think
Ah,
he's shown that he at times he can be the primary option for a team, but the question that we think of is he the best fit for this core, or is he going to be a trading asset for the Toronto Raptors? I feel like coming off, he has a 4-year, $107 million contract that he just signed.
yep,
His
very tradable.
his fit, alongside Bi and Scottie, it's not guaranteed. He's one of those players where he has flashes of, point guard RJ that we've seen, even glimpses when he was
Uh-huh.
in New York. And obviously, this past season with Scottie and Bi being injured, he's shown us these things. But I think the thing that he really needs to focus on is just his shooting ability, his 3-point shot, and really his like off ball movements. I feel like
That's what it is.
his shot making ability is really what complements Scottie and Bi very well, but it's the consistency of it. I feel like he's had glimpses where he's shooting 40% from three, and he's a mid range maestro, but it's for parts of the season. We need to be able
5 games.
exactly.
Yeah.
We need to be able to see it for even if he doesn't play a full 82 game season, just for a majority of the season. I think that's going to be a huge part of the Toronto Raptors having a successful season. But like we I brought it up earlier, is he, we have him as a corner a player that they're building around, but is he really one of the players that they're gonna build around for the future? And I feel like you said, his contract is a pretty
Tradable one, yeah.
tradable contract that you can potentially get some assets or get someone that might complement Scottie and Bi a little bit better. But RJ Barrett, bro, I think he's shown us that he can be that type of player. It's just the
Yep.
consistency for me, and I'm pretty sure ZD agrees as well. It's just, can you do it for a whole year, a whole calendar year? Like going into the
Yeah, I
marches
love that.
and stuff. So, but RJ
I
Barrett,
love
man,
that.
can't knock his game. When he's on, he's
No.
one of the better players in this league. But I think it's just having that consistency for his for a whole season, and really if he's the third player that they're building around for the Toronto Raptors. But yeah, no, I think he has a great potential. I was looking it up. He's only 25 years old, so he still is a pretty young player. I would say not even in
Very
his
young.
prime yet. But
Yeah.
I think that that's the question that the Raptors got to ask. But putting all that aside, he's shown us throughout these past couple of seasons that he can have the potential to be that initiator sometimes, and he's a knockdown shooter. It's just, can you do it for a whole year?
Yeah. And the Canadian native, bro, he's like a perfect tertiary option. If he can be that third option, that's where you want RJ Barrett to be. It's just the fit. Him and Brandon Ingram share this. Scottie Barnes as well. I think all three of them share this. But the expectations coming out of high school were LeBron levels
Oh man.
for all three of them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very hard to like. I think with RJ Barrett's from Canada, went to Montverde,
Mm-hmm.
was played for New York. The New York Knicks is probably the hardest team to play for. Them and the Lakers.
Mm-hmm.
Just because if you mess up, that's on the big screen. You're at MSG. I think it hurt his confidence a little bit, but we saw what he was doing in Toronto for the Raptors, and he looked way better. He looked like the RJ Barrett that we know and love.
Mm-hmm.
I think CJ, you asked a really good question. Like, is he a LeBron type player, or is he just like RJ Barrett that we know? Like RJ Barrett's good. He's a good NBA player, but he's not a champ. Like you can't build a championship winning roster around RJ Barrett. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think those expectations from high school still carry on his back to this day. And I think it's brought a lot of pressure to his game, but he did a really good job of breaking it down. Can he add the 3-point shot? Can he be consistent? Not have the 5, 6 game stretches. Like, can he do it for 2 months? Even then, 2, 3 months.
Right.
You know, we saw James Harden had the
That.
3 month
Mm-hmm.
stretch at the end of the year that was the reason they made All NBA third team. Like,
Mm-hmm.
RJ Barrett has the potential to either be an All Star. I wouldn't say make All NBA, but definitely be an All Star.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, what can he be with Scottie Barnes and Brandon Ingram? I don't know if the Raptors have the answer to that question. They haven't seen that. They know what he is with IQ and Scottie Barnes, right? I think the person who would slot right into this is IQ. You could have Emmanuel quickly in this third spot if you wanted. I think we say RJ Barrett just because we know he played last year and he is a Toronto native. Once again, that plays a part in this. There's a reason they went out and got him in that trade, and I think it just he's now. I would say the season's going to be really big. He probably has the most to prove out of all three of those players that we just named. So I think you're going to see him play with a different type of fire. This is another person I'm excited to see some of the answers that he gives on media day. I think Ingram, we know, veteran. He's going to say he's excited to be in Toronto. He's excited to get ready for the season. But I think RJ Barrett's going to have some more thinking time in terms of what he wants his career to look like. And so I think Toronto having him in the building for right now is good. Like I said earlier, the third scoring option, that's where you want RJ Barrett to be. You don't want him to be your main guy, but they just need to see how those puzzle pieces fit together. So good job of explaining, brother. I think that wraps it up. RJ Barrett, the third person that the Raptors are building around, BI and Scottie Barnes with them as well. So
Mm-hmm.
those are the three main core players. You could put IQ on the list if you wanted to, but he didn't make it this year.
Mm-hmm.
But going right into their cap situation, their balance sheet, talk about their draft picks as well. But man, their total active payroll is 198 million, man. $2 million into the first apron, and CJ, uh, what do you think about that, man? Just for where their roster's at. For those who don't know, the first apron is not a place you want to be. It means you cannot take back more money in a trade, can't use your mid-level exception, can't do sign-in trades, and you will also be paying penalties on every tax over the first on every dollar over the first apron luxury tax.
Mm-hmm.
So, CJ, how do you feel about that? The Raptors being in the first apron?
Honestly, I didn't even know they were in the luxury tax prior to looking at it right now, and obviously you telling me before we started. So honestly, not that happy, honestly, because I feel like the roster that they have, the way it's constructed, and obviously you're having to pay your young guys, like you mentioned earlier, you got to pay Scottie Barnes, right, for the player that he is and the potential that he can be. But it's very interesting, man, because I don't think this roster is championship competing roster. I don't really think that's
I
really
agree.
in.
It's because of their bench too.
It's their bench, yeah, and I think it's also just they're in a situation where I feel like they kind of have to pay these guys because I brought it up
Exactly.
before we started recording as well. Toronto isn't like a free agency destination where people are wanting to go there. So obviously having to go through customs all the time and this and that, it's a little bit more than just on the court,
Tougher.
Yeah, and I feel like it sucks because I feel like they're in a situation where they're kind of having to overspend for certain players that they're getting because Bi, Scotty, RJ, and then even IQ, they all got paid within that first year
That's
that they
60% of their cap.
and
That's 65% of their cap.
and it's like realistically, I don't think that they're great. They're great. I wouldn't say great. They're good players. They're good NBA players. I just don't think that they could take you to that mountaintop. And for you being in the luxury tax, that's kind of the mentality that the owners kind of have to have if they're willing to
Right.
sacrifice like you mid-level exceptions, trading, being taxed for every dollar. It's
That's
hard
what it is.
it's hard to really justify me saying that this is worth it when it's just the roster isn't made up for that situation, But yeah, no,
Very interesting.
it sucks, but I feel like they had no real choice. They have to pay their people because I don't think they're really a destination that free agents are wanting to go to. So it's not like they could splash, and they have to
Great
invest
explanation.
invest into their younger guys when they can, and maybe overspend, and then hopefully it's we bring it
Yep.
up a lot whenever like maybe that contract is going to be worth it in the long run. But as of right now, nah, I'm not too happy for that for them because I don't think
Yeah.
this roster is going to make it to that mountaintop.
Yeah. Very good take right there. I think. I'm with you. I think they're $10 million away from the second apron. One more signing puts them in the second apron. I just said it, but 65% of their cap is allotted to Barnes, IQ, Ingram, and Barrett, right? So those are your main dudes. Pretty much everybody else is going to be extra trade pieces or asset pieces, whatever you want to say. I'm nervous that the Raptors are hurting their future. I mean, we'll talk. I mean, so they're in the first apron. They're $10 million away from the second apron. They do have all their draft picks. So that is the one saving grace for the Toronto Raptors. I did some research on out of all the apron teams, they're the only apron team to have all of their picks.
Mm-hmm.
So it does give them a little bit of room to breathe in terms of building towards the future. However, as of today, right now they're in that apron, and so they are paying for this roster that I just don't see winning a championship. So that's never good. I mean, you want to be thinking about the future. You want to be willing to spend for your players that you've developed, and you want to bring in other guys, but not at the expense of your future capital. And I think that's where the Raptors currently sit. It's not they're in one of the more peculiar situations because you did a really good job of explaining it, but they were kind of forced to do this in a sense, extend their guys. They traded for certain dudes that were actually on extension years, so they had to sign them the year after. So it's tough, but I think their saving grace is having all of their picks through 2032. That's something that any team, I would love to say that the Lakers had all their first round picks through 2032, but we don't because we have Luka. So kind of goes to show you the Raptors have done some maneuvering around how they've signed these guys to not give up their future, which is good. And I think the Raptors have always drafted really well too. So I think they do have something to look forward to whenever they get out of the apron situation. If they get out of the situation, yet to be seen. We'll talk about that a little bit later on the off the court priorities, but there's some moves that they can make, trading away RJ Barrett. You already said that, but there's some moves that they can make that would take them out of that apron status. And I think the Raptors will have to think about that depending on how their season goes. The Eastern Conference is a very weak conference this year. Who's not to say the Raptors are a top 6 seed and they're like, we're good.
Yeah.
They're gonna pretend that they're good. So I'm hoping.
Let me ask you this: like, is that like a false hope for them though? At
Yeah,
this point?
bro. Yeah, like I could totally see that. They make the playoffs and they're like, we have a great roster. There's no reason why we shouldn't be paying first apron luxury tax dollars. And I'm just like, I guess. I mean, you got to look at the landscape. Tatum, Tatum's on the court, which is crazy, by the way.
He is. Yeah.
Did you see that?
I did see that. That's wild, honestly.
He's on the. Anyways, so the Celtics will be good again.
Yes.
Barring what they do with Anthony Simons is yet to be seen. He's kind of their only question mark, but I think they'll re-sign him and he gets 20 a game for his career.
Yeah.
Like he might be a 20 points per game scorer for his career, which is crazy to say, but the Celtics are going to be there. So you have to be mindful of that because that's going to change the Eastern Conference by one spot pretty much. Everybody's going to get bumped down or bumped up one spot depending on how well the Celtics do in 2 years. Same with the Pacers. And so you got to be mindful of that. But yeah, I think Toronto, with all of their draft picks being $10 million away from the second apron, they don't need to panic yet. But they are paying that repeater tax right now. So that's very interesting to see.
Yeah, no, it's like I said, I think it's like you said, they could be a top 6 seed in the East, and my only fear is that that's going to give them false hope. Like, man, it justifies us being in the first apron, but like you said, it's the landscape of the Eastern Conference right now. Yeah, like not that's expected because I don't think anyone's expecting them to be a solidified playoff team, but I think it kind of gives them a situation where I feel like it justifies it a little bit for this year. And then they could, if they do that, for instance, be a first round exit, and then you're kind of back to square one where it's like, all right, we kind of got to think about this. If, coming into this next season, if this is what our same roster, we have the same team, is this still enough? And I'm going to be honest, we brought it up earlier. Yeah. It's not. So I think it's
not for $200 million.
Not for $200 million. No, not at all.
Yeah, can't do it. So we'll see what the Raptors do going forward. But as of right now, man, in luxury, $198 million, $10 million away from the second apron. all their draft picks. So it's a out of a scale of 1 to 10, I'd say it's like a 5 balance sheet. We've seen better balance sheets before,
Mm-hmm.
but we've also seen worse. So the Cavs, man, they got probably the worst one
Worst one, hands down.
in the NBA for sure. But yeah, we'll see what they do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, going on to their on court priorities that they should focus on this year. I mean, we brought it up earlier. There are three guys that they're building around: Scottie Barnes, Bi, and R.J. Barrett. I think they got to figure out how that fit is. I mean, obviously they're three best players. Like you brought it up earlier, IQ could be that third if you want to. We just didn't really see him last year, so it has to be R.J. in our eyes. It's Barnes has to be more consistent, but his injury
Yeah,
history is the main concern for us. Playing three forwards
yep,
all at once as well. It gives them
that's
the
the
size
thing.
and versatility, yet none of them are really offensive initiators. So it raises the question of how is the spacing going to be and who is going to be doing what each time during games. I feel like that's the main thing.
Who's who?
Who's the go-to
Yeah,
scorer? Who's going to provide the shooting and who's going to anchor the defense? Until Ingram actually shares the floor with Barnes and Barrett, the Raptors' true identity really remains uncertain. So I think that's they need
man, that's
they
a perfect explanation.
they really
Yeah,
they really need to figure that out because RJ is a shooting guard per se, but he's more so a small forward, if we're
small
being
forward,
honest.
right?
But I think just the situation where they're at, they're gonna have Bi playing the small forward, and they're probably gonna have Scottie playing the power forward. So like I said earlier, you have three forwards playing, and none of them are really able to create for anyone else. So it's going to be interesting to see how they fit all those puzzle pieces together. I think it's really going to revolve around Scottie and seeing how he can. Hopefully, he takes a leap this upcoming year and kind of provides that initiator that they're kind of
Yeah,
looking
that
for,
offensive creator.
that we're kind of like asking the questions about right now. But at this moment, it's kind of hard to really say who is going to be that. I mean, obviously we're hoping for Scottie too, but as of right now, it's none of them. They're all good at what they can do, but none of them are elite at a
Elite.
certain
Yeah,
at defense or at
that's a good way to explain that.
playmaking or even shooting. They're all
Yeah,
scorers for the most part, but it's really in the paint or the mid range. So it's who's going to be who and where is each person going to fit in really their whole scheme as a team, but really offensively as well. Because I feel like they're all kind of similar in a sense, but
yeah,
it's
dude.
it's that's got to be their main priority for sure. Just
Yeah,
the
that.
fit between their three main guys.
Yeah, like outside of Colin Murray Boyle's development, you could argue this is the most important thing for the Raptors, period. Because if they figure this out, their team ends up being really good. Well, then the apron might be justified,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you end up figuring out this fit between Barnes and Barrett and Ingram, and you guys are top 4 seed in the East, you're a powerhouse. Like you said, CJ, they're able to schematically change the dynamic of what players they have on the court. And because they have similar players, it'll be interesting to see how they do this. I think Bi is going to be the main scorer.
Mm-hmm.
I could be wrong. You never know. Like we haven't seen what that product looks like, and the fact that like the Raptors are going in, they're in the apron and they don't know what their core looks like is another reason to be a little bit uncertain.
Mm-hmm.
They're paying for this roster before seeing what the roster looks like.
Yeah.
It's not like they had Brandon Ingram for 2 years and then
Yeah.
re-signed them to go into the apron. Like
Mm-hmm.
this stuff is all happening pretty quick. So I think you do a really good job of explaining that. Like who's going to be who? What does the scheme look like specifically on offense? Because I think they're built to be a good offensive team. And having Scottie Barnes, having RJ, having Bi, like it looks great on paper,
Mm-hmm.
right? But like we know paper in the real NBA game doesn't always translate. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think that's why you brought up this point right here. And I think it's a really important one. It's their number one thing they need to be focused on going into next year. And it's another reason why I'm excited to break down the media day. I just want to see how those three dudes respond. And I'm sure they know that they're franchise pieces. I'm sure they've been talked to and, kind of like, hey, you guys are going to be the spearhead of our team. And well, that's good. The responsibility is good. I think they just have to decide on the roles. You
Mm-hmm.
know, like you said, they have to decide who's going to be their main scorer, who's going to anchor the defense, who's going to be able to be the offensive creator when two dudes are really going one on one. You know, it's not all three of those guys aren't going to be getting 6, 7 assists. It's going to be very top heavy with that. So we'll see how quickly can help that fit run together and gel together. And I'm excited to see what the Raptors have in store. But yeah, that's the number one point for sure. I mean, just seeing how Scottie Barnes, BI fit, how RJ Barrett fits together is really important. And yeah, that caveat, bro, of being in the apron for a team that you don't know what it looks like. Really interesting.
Very interesting.
So yeah, I think that's really uncertain, but takes us into our next point, man. I said it for a second, but um, the player development. I brought up Colin Murray Boyles for a second, but I think that's who they took. They got to focus on developing him, but also their front court depth as well. They're a bit weaker on their bench, and to me, a lot of these apron teams, that's where they run into problems. The Thunder are actually a good example of how to build a team properly. The Thunder are going towards an apron status level, but they're also going to have really good bench players on cheaper contracts. We know guys who are willing to take less money,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I think the Raptors are in an interesting situation. They're so top heavy. All of their starters, I would say, on a good season and when healthy, if they play 65 games, they're probably all 100, top 100 players.
Mm-hmm.
Emmanuel Quickly, RJ Barrett, Scottie Barnes, and Bi. They're
Mm-hmm.
probably a top 100 players in the NBA. So outside of that, what type of development are you going to give me? What am I going to get from Grady Dick? What am I going to get from OJ Baji, who honestly is one of the more underrated players that we have, who's still underdeveloped, who
Mm-hmm.
just hasn't been in a good situation? Went to Utah to start out his career from Kansas, and he's a really interesting piece as well. I spoke about Colin Murray Boyles, but developing his jump shot, we know his athleticism and you know where that's going to get him on the court. If you're athletic in the NBA, that can be 50% of your game. It's just like, what else is CMB going to be able to do? We know Drizzy going to be there repping the team. There's going to be a lot of guys in his ear telling him what to do, and I think that's going to be beneficial for him. But yeah, after Jakopoto, because we haven't spoke about him yet,
Mm-hmm.
after his spot, there's really no center.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's also another issue too. But yeah, their front court's fairly weak. But I would say Toronto, they have other picks. They've always had other picks. They've had some really good draft picks in the past. They know how to develop players. That's not where their issue is. In fact, they actually, I don't know if you remember this, but before Davion Mitchell was on the Heat, he was on the Raptors.
Mm-hmm.
They took a swing on him, and I actually think that's where his career changed. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't on the Heat. He was already that player when he got to the Heat.
Yep.
Happened on the Raptors.
Mm-hmm.
So super interesting. They give guys minutes who end up developing into really interesting pieces. You even brought up they still got Garrett Temple on their damn roster. And they're going deep into the bag of fries with this one. So hopefully they can develop their front court, kind of build on top of their core, and Emmanuel quickly running the offense. And then their bench development, their front court depth, what it looks like behind their starters is going to be really important. And for the Raptors to be a powerhouse team moving forward, I think their bench has to be one of the best benches that we have in the NBA. And if it's not, you're going to see a top heavy roster that probably finishes top 7, top 8 in the East, but gets bounced first round.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, I feel like it was I mean, their championship run was a great testament to their developmental of their players, and seeing Fred VanVleet be an undrafted player and then being able to contribute to winning
Oh,
basketball. I feel
man.
like they're low key like a very underrated player development staff that they got, and kind of just the players that they brought. OG Ananobi, the
Yeah,
Pascal
yeah, exactly.
Siakams,
Pascal Siakam.
we've seen that they can
They
build
can do
up
it.
certain players. So yeah, no, that's definitely their main priority. Very interested to see Colin Murray Boyles, see kind of what he turns into, kind of like you said, being a freak athlete, kind of like another forward. They kind of are at a log jam at the forward position, but
Yeah.
getting another one
So
of
many
that
forwards.
same type of caliber, obviously like raw talent that, I mean, like I was saying, if they can develop him into maybe like a OG type of player, just like a defense minded at first, and then slowly develop his offensive game throughout his years, they're gonna be in a good spot. I feel like that's definitely their behind finding the fit of their three guys. That's definitely one of their main things. And that front court depth, man, like you said, we didn't bring him up at all.
Yeah,
Jakob Pertl is really their only center. So figuring out who else is going to be that backup center or backup forward, however they play. You know, they might be playing some small ball at certain times throughout this whole season, but just figuring out what that looks like. You know, I feel like that's their main things that they should be focused on. And like I was
on the
saying,
court.
man,
Yeah,
whenever they had that championship run, it was because they had a great bench. So they're really gonna have to
exactly.
build on that and figure out who's going to be the next one up. You know, I feel like Grady Dick is definitely up there for that. You know, he showed glimpses this
He's one of
past
the better bench
season.
players in the league. Yeah,
Definitely, definitely. So I think it's gonna be interesting to see what they
he's good.
could be, man. It's they gotta focus on their depth because, like you said, when their top 4 or 5 guys that they got, you know, they're all pretty good. So it's just kind of who else is gonna take that next leap this upcoming season. I think that with the staff that they got there, the player development that they've been proving to us for the past 5 years, they got good players there. It's just kind of developing them into that next tier, that
Yeah.
all-star level type players. So yes sir. Go.
100%, bro. You hit it right on the nose.
Yes sir. So going on into the next off the court priorities that they need to focus on, build through the draft. ZD brought it up. I feel like it was, like he said, the saving grace for their roster or their franchise at this point is the fact that they have all their picks through 2032, and that's something that a lot of teams take it for granted. Like we said, they
100%.
haven't really made a huge splash in trading away their future. It's just really trading the players that they had on their previous roster to get a younger guy or get players that they think are a
Yeah,
better
star.
situation,
Yeah,
whatever they're trying to do. But the fact that they have that until the 2032 season, they're gonna have to build through the draft. We brought it up earlier. They're already in the first apron. They can't really make any other moves, so they must build through the
yeah.
draft. Is the
That's
only
what
way
it
they could
is.
succeed for their future.
Yeah, dude. Like I think you just said the icing on the cake. Since they're in the apron, you don't have another option. I
Mm-hmm.
think they've given themselves the option to build through the draft because they didn't trade their draft picks away.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the thing about this that's interesting is you brought up some of their player development thing. I think you said it too, but they have one of the more underrated player development staffs in the NBA. It's not like the Raptors can't draft good players.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they knew their front office knew this. If they were going to be in the apron, they wanted to have all their picks. I think it's fine. We put it on the outline just to talk about it. They need to do it. They will. I think the Raptors will also be one of the teams who's not the bet. Okay, well, sorry, Toronto fan. I don't think you guys are going to be a top 5 team in the NBA, which means you guys will have a good pick,
Mm-hmm.
which is only means more value for you, right? If you guys were good, you wouldn't get that pick. So I don't know if you want to be good, but the point is just building to the draft is I wish it could be on every single offseason file for every team.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I just don't think teams have draft capital at times, so it can't be something that we put on there. But it baffles me that it's not the number one focus off the court for all 30 teams, not
Mm-hmm.
just the Raptors. So I think Toronto is actually one of the few teams in the NBA that drafts really well and consistently has players that they've developed that have potential Hall of Famers, NBA champions, right? Like they have a great player development history. So I think that kind of goes into this point here, building through the draft, making sure Colin Murray Boyles is ready to go, like their current draft pick from this last year. And yeah, I think ultimately you have to weigh your options and understand and look for new ways to improve your team, and the draft is the best way for any team to improve their team. So yeah, building through the draft, definitely the number one thing off the court. And then kind of takes us into our second point, the first apron status. We spoke about this for a few minutes, 15 minutes ago, but um, since they are in the first apron, and I said this earlier too, they don't know what their team looks like. It's not like they were in the they went to the championship last year, so it's worth it.
Mm-hmm.
They have to look for every reason to either A, confirm to stay in the first apron, or B, get the fuck out of there.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's no reason to be there unless your team is competing. The reason they're in that apron is the BI thing, right? But we spoke about RJ Barrett. Is RJ Barrett a player that you need to have on the roster? We know he's a Toronto native. but we also know we could use the 25 million a year for more draft picks or to get out of the apron. And I don't think having RJ on the roster is going to flip it any more than it would having IQ be a player you're building around, if
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense. If we flip the list that we had earlier and put Emmanuel quickly in there, would it change the result?
No.
Probably not,
Mm-mm.
right? So like that's where it goes. We talk about the value discrepancy. We spoke about it on this podcast before. It's not just the Raptors, but it's with every team.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the reason why Cam Thomas was asked about his qualifying offer and Kuminga still isn't on the roster is because people don't know value
Mm-hmm.
anymore. So the Raptors have to determine value quickly, and that's why I said the A and B understanding. You got to have a reason to be in the apron, or B, find all the reasons to get out. Because at this moment in time, you're in such an uncertain period of your team because you don't know what your roster can bring to the table. You don't really know what move to make next outside of building to the draft, which is always great, but you're not guaranteed to do
Mm-hmm.
that. In fact, a lot of times in the lottery, which most likely the Raptors will potentially be, those odds don't even flip right. Like the worst team doesn't get the number one pick. Like you're not even going to get the pick that you should get
Mm-hmm.
unless you get a little lucky, right? So that in itself, I think the first apron status for any team is scary, but especially if you're Toronto, especially if you don't know what your core looks like, and you know, especially if you're not a championship contending team. To be honest with you, I
Mm-hmm.
think they're going to have to make some decisions when it comes down to the margins. Like, do we need RJ on this team? Do we need Jakob Podol on the team? Right? Like some because he still has value, potentially a couple second round picks and a player
Mm-hmm.
type value. So I think Toronto needs to look to move off some dudes. I don't think the untouchables for me are Scottie Barnes, BI, and IQ. We're not going to talk about those players. Those players aren't tradable, but everybody else is tradable. Um, and I think if you ask the Raptors GM right now, sitting across from me, I think he'd agree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah, he'd agree.
he'd agree. Yeah,
I
for sure.
think you did a good job of explaining it, but RJ is not, he's a good player and he gets 16, 17 a game. It's just the jump shooting, the offensive creation, like at times the offense is just stuck in mud with him. So I think there are some ways to shake out of this, move out of the first apron, but as of right now, that's got to be a priority because you have to either A, answer why it's valuable to be in the first apron, or B, disprove it.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, you explained it perfectly, bro. It's hard for us to justify a team being in the first apron if you for them specifically they just don't know what that looks like, that roster, what it
Right.
looks like fully healthy. So it's trying to figure out how to get out of it, or like you said, if it's worth it. And usually it's worth it if you're a championship contender and they're not at that point. So they gotta figure out how to get out of it. And I think, it sucks to say it, but RJ is the odd man out in this situation just because of their roster situation right now. You already,
Landscape
yeah,
too. Yeah,
it's
the log jam they have at forward. They know IQ is their point guard. Like,
mhm.
yeah, he's not tradable. So I think that's pretty solid offseason file, my man. Did you feel comfortable closing the book on Toronto?
Yeah, we could close it up, man. Just ready to see what they
Man,
look like, man. Because like you said, they have three guys, four guys that are potential top 100 players in the league when healthy, and it's just if they can be healthy and if they're when they're healthy, if they can be consistent, not even for the whole year, like you said, it's just chunks of the season, and I think that's our main question mark for the Toronto Raptors. But yeah, no, I think this was good. We could put the bow on the top of it and close the book on them until this upcoming season when we'll talk about them.
100%. Oh yeah, bro. I'm gonna go through their media day in a second, but did you want to add anything else for our lovely viewers?
Um, no, man, just season's getting closer. I feel
Oh,
like we
bro,
we say this all the
preseason's almost
time.
here.
Preseason is about to start.
Yeah,
Obviously, media days going on, so it's just getting close, man. I'm just ready. I brought it up earlier. Just seeing the football season, being involved in it a lot more now. It's just getting me ready for what I really enjoyed to watch all the time and able to hop on the pod and chop it up with you about, man. I'm getting hyped for it.
very
So
thankful.
yes,
Yeah,
sir,
me
bro.
too, man. Just stay up to date with the hoops. We're gonna be having some shorts coming out. Got some interesting things. Staying up to date with the episodes, and yeah, we only got a couple more teams, man. We're gonna finish it out.
Mm-hmm.
Utah, Washington. I think we got one more, three more. I think we have three more. think it's our 2017.
It is,
Maybe
yep.
we only have two more. So I think we might have three more or four. I'm not sure. Anyways, just a couple more
Couple
offseason
more,
files
yeah,
to
yeah.
do. And yeah, we'll have to see, man. It's good. I think media day is good. It's good chance to see the previews. You know what players are thinking, and yeah, Toronto Raptors. I'm excited to see their season and how it shakes out. But that's gonna do it for me over here at Three Man. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, sir. Well, if y'all liked and enjoyed this episode of Three Man Weave, don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see y'all next time, man. Peace. Three
Peace,
man, three
Three
man, three
Man.
man.